Dorothy Helfrich was Deedee Helfrich to all of us at that time, and it was a very early time for women's athletics. We had a program, one of the few universities that did have a program for women, an intercollegiate program. She played 3 sports. Her main sport, I recollect, was field hockey, but she played basketball and lacrosse, and I was in tennis at the time. And I know if she'd played tennis at all, that had time, she would have been top of that list too. She was just naturally an athletic young girl. She was definitely a leader and a pioneer for women's athletics during her day. She really might have been the best natural athlete that I've ever seen here. She was small, maybe even shorter than I am. Little bitty thing, feisty, energetic, fast, and just was so enthusiastic about playing whatever she could. There wasn't a lot of money. There were no scholarships. There were no uniforms to speak of. We might have had a penny. But otherwise, she just didn't have any of the advantages that athletes have today. And I doubt if they wore the same number every time. But anyway, it was a hard time for athletes, but they loved it. And they wanted to do it. She still, even with the few opportunities, she rose to the top. And I think if she were here today, she would be on a U.S. team. She would graduate and become part of a U.S. team, maybe even a professional team. She just was a natural athlete who had tons of spirit and so much enthusiasm. You couldn't help but follow her and watch her. And today, and this year, it's truly the year of the woman. And I just, Deedee could have been here during this period. It's a great honor for the college to really get a good picture of how important she was to women's athletics and be inducted into the William and Mary Hall of Fame.
Accepting for Deedee, her husband, Richard Anderson.
Deedee, we're here tonight. I think, first of all, she'd like to thank everybody for her support, for your support. Also, I think she would be the first to say that she really worked with an awful lot of really very good athletes. As they jokingly always say, there's no I in team, and she would always point to her teammates as being the reason for her success. I think what you saw here about her participation in sports at William and Mary, unfortunately, I didn't know her. I only knew her for 35 years after that, but she continued to play for the U.S. on touring sides before there were Olympics. So she remained an athlete, but after she left William and Mary, she became a teacher. And one of her main themes was trying to make sure that young women had opportunities and were challenged so that they could be all they could be. She was a mathematics teacher. She was a coach. I can say that after she left Oldfield School, which is an all-girls school in Maryland, after we got married, we moved up to Phillips Exeter Academy. She taught mathematics. She became the coach at Phillips Exeter with the highest winning percentage ever. It still exists. We left Exeter, went to St. Mark's School in Massachusetts, where she continued teaching mathematics and coaching. At that point, she became the highest, again, the coach with the highest percentage winning of any woman who has ever been there, and that's still today true. She retired from coaching after that experience, continued on teaching in mathematics, and became department chair of mathematics, continued working as a coach. As I've heard here too, athletes always excel in every area of every school. And Deedee was one who would promote that and really was emphasizing the fact that young women don't excel too often back then in the areas of mathematics and science. She managed to take St. Mark's program. St. Mark's is an excellent academic program. She was the first full-time mathematics teacher. At that point, I think there may have been one or two women, young women, who graduated from St. Mark's with taking anything higher than pre-cal. After Deedee left, most of the people in advanced math up through BC Calc were young ladies. So she had quite an influence, and not just with young ladies, also she was an influence on all the students. They sought her advice. They would ask her for letters of recommendation to colleges, and she was always trying to help when she could. Eventually, she became math chair department in several other schools, introduced BC Calc to several, and in all of her time teaching BC Calc, she had one student earn a 3. The rest were 4s. She had 3 years where all earned 5s. One of those years, they were all girls. Very unusual. Our last years of teaching were spent in China. She had a class of 32, and in that class of 32, 29 earned 5s. And we had 2 4s and a 3, I think it was. But so she was an outstanding teacher and coach. It had been said of her at St. Mark's when she retired that she was always coaching, whether on the field or in the classroom, and anywhere that students had access to her. So this is quite an honor, and thank you all very much on her behalf. Appreciate it. Thank you.